Okay, I'm gonna call to order the meeting of the Lenox Public School Committee meeting of September 13, 2021. I want to take this moment to thank Rachel McLeod, our new technology director, for hopefully getting us into a better place than we were 2 weeks ago when the meeting didn't go as planned in terms of the technology. So I think we're in a much better place now. And I'd like to start off by seeing if there's any public comment. And I'm just going to look at the participant list and see. Everybody's got their hands raised. I don't see anybody. Okay, moving on. I don't have any correspondence for tonight. So we'll go to the board report school committee meeting minutes of August 30th.
I'll move to approve the minutes of August 30th. Second.
Any edits, comments, corrections? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. I think they still have to be roll call because of the people who were in. David Rimler? David Rimler, aye. Bob Munch? Aye. Warren Cass? Aye. Veronica Fenton? Aye. Megan Kirby? Aye. Christine Morrow?
Christine Morrow, aye.
And Bob Vaughn, aye. Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll direct your attention first to the document that was closed in the packet entitled Enrollment October 1st, 2020 and September 10th, 2021. And speaking with some of the members of the committee, we were asked if we had a sense of where our enrollment compares to where it did last year. So we didn't have an exact match month over month, but the October 1st enrollment count is going to be pretty close. So I've included this in the packet so that we can share kind of where we are. So currently at Morris, we're at 277 students, 41% of which are choice. And then at MA DESE and grades 6 through 12, we have 429 students presently. 38% of those students are choice students. And I've got to thank Amy Noble and Bisky for pulling together this data and making these really flashy charts here. But the one thing that's kind of may not be apparent when you first look at this is that those total numbers do not include the pre-K students. There's a little note there because it will skew the choice calculations. And so we kind of leave those out when we do the percent choice. But our overall enrollment right now is 729. Last year at this time, it was 746. And so we are down a little bit from where we were last year, 17 students difference in our overall enrollment. So that's where we are. And Amy, I don't remember off the top of my head, and maybe you don't either, but what the wait lists look like for each grade level if we wanted to.
We have a total of 58 people on the 13 grades, probably still 12, nobody as a senior, but we still have 58 people on the wait list.
Let me just jump in here for a second. So in your superintendent's report that you just sent out to us today, you mentioned that 731 out of 732 students were mass. So I'm just wondering if the left-hand chart is really the 2021 chart and the right-hand chart is for the 2020, or is there something I'm missing?
No, what we're seeing right now is the latest. So again, I started that document a few days ago, and so the numbers changed a little bit. And we had changed with 3 students who've since elected to go online. So that they should have been an online school, and so that's probably why you're seeing the difference in the number.
So the right-hand one really is 2021?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So the 731 figure that you mentioned in your report to us would include pre-K.
Yes.
Plus the 706, that gets us to 727 plus whatever number of kids have changed.
Right.
All right.
So currently we have 729, because again, we've had a few that elected to go to an online school.
Okay. I was just confused by it because that 731 seemed to be a nice match to this number over here.
Right.
So third, fifth, sixth, and tenth seem fairly low percentages for choice. Are there kids queued up on the wait list for those grades?
We admitted everyone for sixth grade. For choice, there's no one left on the wait list for sixth grade.
But fifth and tenth, was there anybody still out there?
I'm trying to pull up the document, but it's a little slow.
Can I just, for 1 second, while Amy gets that, can I ask a question also? So, Dr. Gosselin, do you have a sense of, do you have somehow a sense of where all of the students that, for example, those who didn't come back, for example, went to private school or homeschooling? Do you have a sense of sort of where everybody is, where everybody ended up?
So we knew that some of our students did go to parochial schools, and at the beginning of the school year, many of the families that did do that were indicating they were coming back. So we did recapture some of those students. Lately, we did have a few students, like I said, look into a online option since none is being allowed currently by the state of Massachusetts. If families had concerns around COVID safety, the only option for them would be to go to a separate online charter school. So that's the only other sense we get. But other than that, it seems to kind of be normal ups and downs in terms of the numbers and the fluctuation of students. I think one of the things when you look, if you really want to do a more apt comparison, if you look at this year's sixth graders, you look at last year's fifth graders, and kind of look at it that way. So because that's the survival of that particular cohort year over year. And you can see that we actually have more choice kids in that cohort this year than we did from the previous year. So we picked up a few there. But it seems to be that we've just had some movement, in and out, mainly surrounded by COVID. And again, not massive numbers. I think we also had a few that went to other high schools for some of the options that are available there in terms of some of the pre-professional programs. And so we've lost a few kids that way. But other than that, that's about what we've been hearing. Amy, I don't know if you have any other sense.
We had a recent large number of one family that has determined to either homeschool or go online.
Right.
We did have an extraordinary large number of incoming ninth graders go to Taconic this year, more than normal. And I apologize, I'm trying to pull up the document, but our tech director is currently working on the drive where all my documents are housed, and I can't access them.
I'll finish the thought on that, which is those grades seem to be well below 40%. And our overall enrollment seems a little bit light. So if there was still demand, I would be, in support of raising some of those choice numbers to bring the numbers up a little bit more. Because by the numbers I have here, we're down to 25 kids from last year.
Yeah.
If there's slots available, we're still within our guidelines, I think that'd be a good exercise to bring the numbers up a little bit.
So we're at overall 729 this year. We're at 746 last year. And both kids, once you add pre-Ks back in, we had 6 more pre-K this year than last year. So I do agree with you that we do have some space for some additional choice students in some of those grade levels. They do look a little light. What that does, we should be cognizant of, is that we try to stay within 40% overall, and we're at 39. So once we start adding them, it can skew the overall number. So we try to be a little strategic around that too. But I think it's in the light grades, it certainly makes sense. And when we do have a wait list,
And that's what I'm curious about, is if the demand is there or not,
We originally had hoped, there were more incoming sixth graders on the list, and we offered spots to some of them in the last couple of weeks before school started, and some of them said no. So had they all said yes, we would be up at that 40%. And so when they all said no, we didn't move into a different grade because it was getting close to the start of school.
yeah, that's an important point, because we also do build out a model that assumes if we had the maximum amount of choice of what that would look like. And so that's kind of how we start making our choice decisions down the stretch there is, how close we can match that model. And so in that case, yeah, we just had kind of a weird anomaly where the sixth graders that we then did offer the invite to, said, thanks, but we already have another option for the year.
I don't disagree with the thought around, seeing if there are more choice kids who would be interested, but I think it bears mention that what we're talking about is trying to see if we can boost our enrollment by boosting choice, and the place where we actually have unlimited opportunity to boost enrollment is in resident enrollment. And it's unfortunate to see that we came through the pandemic, if we can say that. I mean, we're still in the middle of it and haven't actually boosted our resident enrollment, and in fact have lost some. So a lot of big reasons for that. And it's a difficult problem to solve, and we've talked about it many times, but I think again, it stands out to me in the numbers that we see here, and I think it's worth talking about again.
And if I can, in past times, there have been conversations about, including in our survey and our strategic plan, about specific outreach to families who have left, to get a real fair sense of why they've left. This also doesn't tell us, for example, if choice students leave, right? But it does tell us a little bit, there's a change in numbers if you look in deeply, but sometimes students are here at choice and then they choose to leave. So I think it'd be helpful, and I think it'd be important to have a person that is sensitive and can, in a position of trust, and I'm not sure who that always can be, and you're still getting to know all the characters, but to be able to really reach out and seek out real feedback from families in multiple ways, because I think that that's something that's been missing from our data. There's been anecdotes, there's information, there's some people who know, there's some people not sure. And I think it'd be helpful also to maybe, if we're able to dial in a little bit too, to not just, a COVID situation, but or cultural situation or sports or academic situation, but also, were there specific things that maybe Lenox didn't address? Is there something they were looking for? I mean, I know of a family who chose Montessori. I know of several families who choose Montessori, and it's a different style of education. So I think sometimes you're going to look at that and say, the nice thing about having choices is people are going to choose what works best for their family. But if it's something that we've missed an opportunity on, or we've really lost someone because of our inability to meet important social and emotional and academic needs, then I think we need to know that. And sometimes it kind of is like, oh, well, that's in the past, so we're going to move on. We're not going to capture that information. And I just think that it's really, really important that we get that. And I think there's a number of things that have happened in the last few years that are not just COVID that we need to be able to capture in our data. If possible, not that I'm adding anything to your list, but I think there's potential people in trusted relationships who might be able to help with that outreach.
Sure, we'd be happy to take a look into that.
Just one other thought on how we present this data. When we were doing the strategic plan, the data was also available for resident students not enrolled in the school, whether that is because they choiced out, went to private school, homeschool, whatever. And that almost feels like it should be a column chart. Because a little bit to Christine's point about, there's the infinite number of people who have not moved to Lenox, of course, and then, but then there's the question of to what extent is this a demographic issue versus a sort of our share of the community. So I think that would also then source to Ronnie's point, the universe of people we might want to talk to. And then just one other slightly related thought, I think it'll be really important, especially when the October 1st data is sort of finalized, to put it not just next to 2020, but 2019, because people who left last year were already gone by October 1st. And so it's really the people who left, people who did not come last year and are not coming back this year, that I think, at least from a COVID perspective, is sort of the dark matter out there.
And when you're thinking about students who've choiced, or residents who've choiced out, are you framing that or defining that to mean that they choiced into another public school, or because that wouldn't capture necessarily people went to parochial schools or Montessori school or independent
right. I believe the data, which is from the state, captures all of the above. So it's sort of, we know how many kids of school age are in your town,
right,
versus how many are attending your school, and that difference
It's,
then.
yeah, it's a January 1 school attendance.
And I'll follow with you on.
So it doesn't, we won't get the information for this year until 5 or 6 months from now, 4 or 5 months from now, whatever Desi posts it. Which is never as soon as you like it to be posted.
Sure.
Um,
So as far as knowing why someone left, the schools don't do an exit interview, if you will, but they do keep track of where the student went because they have to send their records. And so they can tell you that they went to another district in the county. Or they, and some of them are choice that went back to their home district. Some are residents who went to Taconic, and some of them have moved out of state, and some of them have gone to a private school. I've seen the reports from the guidance department at LMHS, and I know Amy Freeman at Morris keeps the same information. Whenever a student unenrolls, because they have to send it, they know where they're going. That would give us a good picture of at least where they're going. If they go to Taconic 9th grade, you know why. If they left in 10th grade and went back to Pittsfield or Wacona, you don't necessarily know why. Maybe it's transportation, issues, or, we've had people do that where they can no longer get their student to our school, so they have to go back to their home district. There are a number of reasons. That would be a good place to start with this list from the schools.
So we'll follow up on some of those and then see if at the next meeting we can bring you some further clarification and insight to as where those solutions have gone, as best as we can figure out this point. And again, we'll also reach out and try to see if we can do some of the softer data collection in terms of finding out why. Maybe we can help to do that.
Well, also at the October 5th meeting, we'll have the October 1 numbers, so we'll have a direct comparison, because there could be some changes take place.
And what I thought was good news was that first grade, second grade, and third grade all added students. So that seemed to prove to me that younger families were moving in as residents. And we added three more to first grade, I think 5 to second grade, and 2 to third grade. So there are some newer students coming into the district as residents.
Lost 5 in a second.
Yeah.
It's weird, like I'm just still looking at the newest information, I keep flipping stuff around, I read right to left, and.
We went from.
Yeah, so I was
in the second grade class, first grade, which is this year, second grade.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
25 people,
Yeah.
so picked up 5 students.
And you have to compare
No, I
this
see what
year's
you're
first
saying.
to this year's
Yep.
second to know what's happening in a.
I was so lost on it, so I was like, oh, wait.
One heuristic I think is really helpful for analyzing this is to keep in mind that every year we have smaller kindergartens coming in than senior classes graduated. And so even if we just hold everybody, the school still keeps getting smaller until the point where our incoming classes are as big as our outgoing classes. And so if you look where we had 61 seniors going out in 2020, and we then added 42 kindergartners in 2021, that swing of 19 is exactly the total swing. So there are other places where we picked up or lost, but in terms of what's driving it, most of it is not us people coming in or people coming out. It's that we have much larger classes from the past graduating faster.
There's not room in kindergarten for the same number of students that there are in high school, so it does start out smaller on purpose. And then we add a fairly large, again, it's choice that we're adding to supplement the class size. But we add choice in primarily 6th grade and 9th grade because that's a good starting spot. It's where most people are interested, and it's where the classes can start to handle a larger number of students in a particular grade or class. So,
Right, but this year it looks like we didn't add anyone in 9th grade, or at least it was a wash.
it was a wash. We added 6, I think, in 9th grade, but we lost that many going to Taconic. So, we lost residents and added choice, which makes the percentage kind of lopsided, but we didn't know at the beginning how many we were going to lose, and 6 is double pretty much in the year. But we definitely did add 9th grade. Both some residents, or also some tuition students, which count in this purpose as residents, and some choice. theory, if we're at 40% choice and want to stay there, we can only add as many choice kindergartners as we lose seniors if everything else stays equal. So there's the other side of that calculation. And if you continue to add 50% kindergartners, at some point you're going to have a 50% district. So
Okay,
All right, so we'll move on to the next part of the report. Try to share my screen here, hopefully our technology works. All right. So I wanted to take a few moments and report on the opening of the school year. First and foremost, I think I want to thank all of our teachers, administrators, custodial staff, secretarial staff who did a yeoman's task in getting schools ready to open. And it was a wonderful school opening. The kids returned to school, I think over the moon. They were excited. I started the day at the high school and students were all abuzz, super excited to be back at school, full of smiles and welcoming one another back. So it was great to see that. Our new assistant principal was outside greeting the students, and he also received a warm welcome from the kids. And so the kids were just wonderful. They were super polite and friendly and welcoming. And so it was a great morning. And then we went over to Morris, and again, wonderful. Most of the kids were very excited. A few tears, but not too many. So I think that was pretty good, all things considered, that we only had a few tears. You've been in elementary school, you know that sometimes that's a thing for kids, especially for our kindergartners. But overall, the kids were really excited to be back at school. The families were very excited that the students returning to us. Let me advance through here. So, yeah, we're certainly back. And I think one of the things that I like to celebrate is we're back in school, we're back in person. And so that was something that was really important to us to be able to do this in a way that was safe, but also optimized education for the kids. And so we're really trying to strike that balance. And it seems to be going very well thus far. One of the things, that I wanted to just share was a quick quote, and it talks about the importance of each child and each teacher, and what that can do to change the world. And so here's a quote from Malala, who kind of shares this and all the work that she's done to fight for children around the world to have that opportunity. So as we gear up and get ready, a lot of work has gone into the building preparations. The buildings look fantastic. We did have an asbestos incident over the summer that again was rectified. We haven't had any further issues there, so we're really happy that that's being addressed and it's not been a problem moving forward. Again, the buildings were clean, they were painted, there was some updating and upgrading that's going on. The outdoor classrooms are a wonderful addition over at Morris to provide some additional outdoor spaces. The technology and hardware and software that goes with technology has also been something that I think was a win for us that maybe had a little fanfare, but deserves perhaps a little bit more because our new technology director, Randy McLeod, and his team worked very hard to order, process, sanitize, and distribute Chromebooks so that all of our students have Chromebooks so that we can realize the advantages of being a one-to-one technology district. Likewise, hitting the ground running and really learning his way forward as he quickly had to turn around and make sure the Canvas was ready and deal with the some of the hiccups that happen with Canvas and making sure that classes are graduated from one grade to the next in Canvas. We did a great job getting all that ready to roll. We had an opportunity to have a couple days of professional learning before we opened, and I attended some of the sessions at the high school and was very impressed with the offerings that were delivered to our teachers, particularly one that was on depersonalizing behavior, which I think is really important when we're dealing with students to focus on the behaviors and thinking about the root causes of the behavior and separating that from the person. And so there's really a sense of how do we promote discipline and dignity for students, and that was really well done by the high school guidance staff. And then we also had a convocation to welcome everybody that was held in person over in the Dublin Theater. And we had a great time. It was interactive. We had an opportunity to get up and play a little bit as a faculty and staff. Also to talk about kind of what our areas of focus are as a district moving forward this year. Introducing the strategic plan, which for some of our folks may not have had as deep an understanding of the strategic plan because it was launched against COVID last year and we're in and out with everything. So we want to make sure that we really had an opportunity for our folks to see the strategic plan, see the 8 areas of importance that were highlighted by the team, which did an amazing job putting together a very ambitious strategic plan. And then also starting to work together collaboratively and give teachers some voice and choice in the decision making around where we want to focus. What's the most important first? So we did some polling with our faculty and staff to try to get some feedback from them. We did some polling with our administrative staff so that we know where we want to focus our efforts as we start to implement the strategic plan moving forward. So it'd be difficult to talk about opening without talking about COVID-19. And we're really trying to, as I said earlier, take a holistic approach that balances keeping our students and our staff safe, but also making sure that we're giving them a high quality education experience and that we're not being put in a position where we're not able to do school the way that we know is best for kids. And so again, I think we're doing a nice job of meeting that reality and striking that balance. We have taken the efforts to mitigate the spread of COVID, including hand sanitizing, making sure that we have PPE on hand to wash desktops, also to sanitize rooms at night. Obviously, the masking policy that the school committee adopted before we opened, along with pool testing, which just launched last week, and all of our faculty and staff are participating in that as well. Before we did pool testing, we also sent out a survey to our staff. And we have over 98% of our staff vaccinated. So again, I think overall, we've taken some steps to make sure that we can open as safely as possible. And we're trying everything in our ability to mitigate COVID and stay in close contact with the medical community and infectious disease experts for feedback. And also working with the Joint Labor Management Committee. We're supposed to meet today, but we had a few folks who couldn't make it, so we scheduled for next week. But again, looking at the metrics and tracking, what mitigation steps make sense given our current context here.
Can you just say more about pool testing and the student participation? Where we are with that?
Sure. So I don't have the exact numbers at my fingertips right now, but we did have 83 pools that were tested. So we had a large number of students and faculty. I know that we do have more students that signed consent forms than we did last year, so our numbers were higher. I know, Amy, you were playing point on that. Do you know offhand what the percentage of students were that opted in?
I do know it's more than last year, but I don't know the percentage because they're doing it at the school level this year as opposed to.
What was the percentage last year that we're comparing this to?
Last year was less than 50%, for sure.
If there's 83, you said 83 groups?
83 pools, right?
83 pools. How big is a pool typically?
Anywhere from 5 to 10 people.
Okay, so 83 times 5 is 415, so.
And I'm pretty sure all the staff pools were probably 10.
Right.
Because we knew they all had to be tested. And they're not in a classroom. At Morris particularly, they do the pools by classroom. So if you have, 12 students in a classroom who want to be tested, then that's 2 pools of 6. But for staff, you can just put 10 alphabetically in a pool, and at LMHS the same way, they just stopped by on their way to lunch. So there wasn't any preformed pools of less than 10 because of class size. So I think the pools were probably most, at least half of them were 10.
Yeah, so it seems, without having hard numbers, it seems we're somewhere between 415 and probably 500 to 550 out of them.
Yeah. I think last year we ran between 300 and 400.
Yeah.
And that's with the roughly 150 staff. So then we'd be at 300-ish students probably.
Yeah, and we can get that exact count.
Yeah, I mean, given how central the pool testing strategy has been, I wish we had better data on that and would also expect a very committed effort to bump that up, which obviously can't happen until we know what the numbers are now. I guess just given these numbers, I would also just, I am surprised given the rhetoric around safety in the weeks leading up to school that fewer than half of parents appear to have actually opted it. There are a few ways to interpret that, but I guess as we're going forward, we should certainly take that as one read of the community's kind of approach, I think, to where we are.
Yeah, and again, we can look and get those numbers for you in terms of how many students we actually do have consent forms for. And also maybe looking at the balance of that elementary versus secondary might be helpful to know as well.
Yeah.
So we can do that.
And is there any plan for trying to get that number up higher?
So yes, of course, we want to get that number higher in our, we're constantly messaging that in our building principals, we're especially messaging that for all their communications home. And so again, we have to be very, I think, strategic with it to do this, because if we continue to just say, keep doing it, then it becomes white noise, people just sort of turn it out. So we want to make sure that we had the initial email blast that went out, encouraging people, we had a pretty good response rate to that. And then now that school started saying, hey, school has started, but you can still join, because some people will think that, oh, I missed it, so I can't do it anymore. So we had to let them know that, oh, no, you can. And again, as students see their friends that are participating, then there's less stigma, and they say, oh, okay, this is more, so that everyone's doing it. All of our athletes have to do it. So, that's another tool that, we have obviously high compliance with, but we'll get those numbers, and again, we're gonna continue to try to push that, because again, we talked to our local health experts. After vaccination and masking, the protesting, they were very strident advocates about in terms of looking at that to give us a sense of our relative safety and what would help us know when we could maybe look at other options for mitigation strategies.
Yeah. If I just suggest, I think orientation, at least for Morris, is next week, having printed forms in the classrooms with pens next to them. I think would be a good opportunity to reach people.
That's a great idea. And then there's an open house tomorrow night for the high school as well, so we can make sure that people are provided with that same information. So when we think about safety, we certainly are thinking about physical safety in terms of buildings and keeping them secure, and making sure that only people that belong inside buildings are there, but also the physical safety around COVID-19 and our mitigation strategies there. But again, I try to think of safety in a broader sense, and also then layer in the emotional and psychological safety of our students. And so I think that we're really trying to make sure that we provide opportunities for students to play and socialize, also having a specific focus on social emotional learning at both buildings. Particularly Morris has brought on a new program that directly gives a social emotional learning called Second Step. And so they're working with the students as well. So we wanted to try to let schools feel as normal, so to speak, as possible. And so and we want students to have the opportunities to engage in that socialization, which for many of our students share with us was lost during, especially remote learning. And so adolescents especially were saying that they really miss being at school with their friends. And so that's something that right away they were really excited about the opportunity to be back in school, in classrooms, and have a chance to eat together with their peers and socialize. So we were happy to see that. As we think about the year, we want to try to think beyond COVID and think about some things that are important to us. And I think that one of the ways that this comes through to me, and thinking about the strategic plan and some of the ideas that were also further there, are kind of thinking around the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are something that we talk about in education all the time as preparing students for the 21st century, which it's kind of a strange term because we're 21 years into the 21st century, right? So it's really not preparing them for the future, but preparing them for life now or the rest of the century, right? And so we want to really think around helping not just work on the academic traditional skills, but also thinking around helping our students become better at collaborating, communicating, engaging in critical thinking, and then also creativity. And so as I walked through the schools in the first few days of school, I was really trying to think about and use that as a lens, as where was I seeing these things? And so in Morris, certainly I saw collaboration as students were working in groups on opening day projects and activities. Kids were down on the floor working with one another. They were seated at tables or in clusters of desks together working. So they were staying masked and staying safe, but also having that opportunity to work with peers and not being on islands of individuals. So there was a high degree of collaboration that was already being introduced into schools. Communication also was one of the pieces that I saw at Morris that came through. Again, students were seated in seating arrangements that fostered communication. Classes were involved in classroom discussions and class meetings. And so those things were starting to return, like I said, and making it feel more and more like school. And so I was really excited to see that. Also, even though the school year was just at its opening few days, there was some evidence of critical thinking already starting to be laid into the schools. And that took the form right now more of thinking around how do we build communities in our classrooms, and what voice and choice that students have in that. And there was tremendous agency being offered to students as they were sitting and meeting with their teachers who were facilitating conversations where the kids themselves were creating some of the class norms or class rules, so to speak. And so again, it wasn't the teacher saying, here's my rules, now you guys all have to abide by it, but really allowing the children some ownership in that process. So I thought that was a great way to infuse critical thinking right in the initial days of school. And then lots of creativity. If you walk around Morris, there's already student artwork adorning the walls. Day one, there was already art projects going on. Students were singing and dancing. Music class, kids were down the floor playing instruments. So lots of opportunities for creative expression. And so again, that was really something that warmed my heart to see that after coming out of COVID, where kids were missing so many of those things. And which for some kids are the things that they really look forward to more than anything. I know my own kids, they come home, they would tell me what their special was today. So those things really have added value for our boys and girls. So here's just a few snapshots of kind of what school looks like. I think this really, helps paint a picture for folks who are wondering, what does school look like during COVID? How normal is it? How abnormal is it? So again, you see students are sitting at tables. So they have that opportunity for collaboration and discussion and to work together on group projects. And so, again, I was pleased to see that we can keep kids safe, but still offer that balance of what we know works best for promoting learning today. Kids are outside playing at recess. Again, it was interesting at recess. Now, it's been the same every day I've been over at Morris. Some kids choose to wear masks at recess, others choose not to. But, again, no one is telling the kids that they must wear or they must not wear. It's kind of being left up to the families to decide. And so this is what recess would look like. Here's some kids playing Foursquare. Again, another classroom, you see the kids are working on artwork, sitting at tables, having that opportunity to work together and still interact with their peers. Here's one of those class meetings I was talking about where students are working on developing norms together. Seated down on the floor. Again, these are the things that I think we really missed out on during remote learning and even some of our returns where kids have to be returning to a school that maybe was more like the school that maybe we remembered where students all sat in desks and rows facing one direction, I think. So this is an opportunity, I think, to re-engage a modern approach to school that's based on best practices. Here's an older group of students and fifth graders. Again, having a class meeting, talking about rules and norms for the school year. Here's a kindergarten classroom. Kids are sitting at tables, getting ready to begin an art activity with their teacher. Again, more students seated in a classroom. This is a typical formation you'll see at Morris, that they're sitting in clusters of about 4 students. This allows for what we're talking in education to work with your elbow partner, if you're sitting next to you, and also your face partner, if you're sitting across from you. So, again, this is a research supported best practice in terms of seating and giving kids opportunities to work together. We can scaffold and happy to work in groups of 4, groups of 2, work individually, but it allows for more flexibility for students to engage in partnering and sharing and collaborating. Here's a movement break, so kids are up dancing. The teacher was playing, I think, a golden noodle video here, and the students were getting their wiggles out and having an opportunity to move around and do a brain break. And so again, some of the things that we know are great for kids, especially our young learners, are being instituted once again in classrooms. Here's a music class. Again, kids are down, playing with the chimes and have an opportunity to get together and get back together, share materials. Again, a lot of these things were not allowed during last year's return. So again, it was nice to see kids had a chance to do some of these things that the hands-on learning makes it so fun to be an elementary school child. Some of the things that were new at Morris this year, I talked a little bit about Second Step. Second Step is an explicit curriculum that's focused on social emotional learning and helping kids engage in anti-bullying. And so that was something that was really important to Brenda as a principal of that building to help improve the culture and climate of an already great school. So it's making a great school even greater. And also the introduction of FastBridge, which is a progress monitoring tool to try to learn where our students are as readers and as math students, where the gaps are coming out of last year, who needs help, what help do they need specifically, and then allowing flexible time for teachers to meet those needs of students. So again, it's a different approach to education where there's a much higher degree of flexibility and responsiveness than a one-size-fits-all educational model before. So over at LMMHS, again, I was looking for the same thing. So I saw the 4 C's at work at Morris. I wanted to see what it looks like at the secondary level. So at the secondary level, right now, all students have been issued Chromebooks. This will really help to enable collaboration across time and space as students work on projects and presentations. Everywhere that I've been, where they've gone to a one-to-one reality for learning, it's been a major shift in what allows us to do as educators. And so it's really important that we do this well, and we don't just allow technology to be an add-on, we just do what we've always done, but really allow it to change what we're able to do as a result of having that technology. Also, in terms of communication, we saw teenagers who, again, peer groups are such a huge part of teenage life and teenage development. They had the opportunity to socialize during lunch, return to playing along with their peers in the athletic fields and performing in performing art spaces. So again, that was something that the students were really excited about, having that opportunity to return to those things. Also eating lunch in some of the outdoor spaces. So the data as in the cafeteria, some of the students were asking to eat outside, and so they went out to the picnic tables and joined their friends outside for lunch. And I have a photo of that also to share in a few minutes. In terms of critical thinking, the year was just getting started, but again, as teachers are talking to students, they're talking about what they're looking for this year. We're framing kind of going through the syllabus and talking about what students should expect. And there's a lot of talk around analytical thinking and talking about how do we think about topics from different points of view. And so that was in the humanities, whether that was in language arts, whether that was in history, whether that was in science, trying to tell students that that's one of the things that will be expected of them is to start to think, outside the box and beyond the text in terms of, how we can start to think around. And that's, I think, what technology also enables us to do to a much greater degree than ever before. Creativity was certainly already flowing at secondary level as well, as students are returning to arts and to some of their classes there. I saw students already working in a design lab, and in the first few days of school, we're already producing works of art. So excited to see students being able to re-engage some of that. And it's, again, for some of our secondary students, this might be a real area of passion for them. This might be the the reason why they like to come to school. This might be something that's a future career for them. So for them to also have time or ways to shine outside of just our traditional subject areas was also really inspiring. Here's one of the pictures of students eating lunch outside. So there are tables that are set up outside, and the students had an opportunity and beautiful late summer afternoon to go outside and have lunch with their peers. Again, talk and eat and have some time to relax and socialize. And so the students are definitely missing that after summer away from their peers. Another exciting thing that's new, and we've just learned about this, is like breaking news from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, is that Lenox is the recipient of a $29,000 grant to help promote career pathways program. And so as we move, this is for the planning grant, and we'll move to the full pathways program in the future. We will have opportunities to develop career education for students, opportunities for students to engage in internships and to work with mentors in the community, to try out different careers, to get an idea of what that looks like, develop some of the readiness skills for work, understand what it means to be an employee, what will be expected of employees, and how you have to show up and be consistent and stay on schedule, and those types of things, and kind of feel some responsibility of what that might be. What I particularly love about this is I think it's easy to think, oh, well, that's great for students who aren't going to be attending college. But I think it's great for students who who don't want to go to college, but also for ones who do, because it gives you a chance to kind of feel out different careers, see what you like, and maybe even more importantly, what you don't want to do. And also develop some of those same skills, life skills that make you successful in college and beyond. So we're really excited to be one of the schools across the state that was chosen for the Pathways project. And we've had some folks that started working on this last year. So it's great to see their hard work be realized this year by being selected from DESE. Fall athletics is fully underway, and I love athletics and all extracurriculars. I think it provides a myriad of benefits that help students develop into more well-rounded individuals. All of our sports are already doing great, they're very competitive. But I really think that when we think around, what do we get beyond just the academic day? I always think of school as kind of two parts. So there's the academic day, and then there's kind of a midpoint, and then there's our second half of our day, which is our sports and extracurriculars. And so the research literature tells us that there's many benefits for students, but the ones that come up time and again in the research literature is that it really helps to foster decision-making, develop teamwork and collaboration, help students develop that time management. And if you talk to any college athlete, they'll tell you that that probably is one of the things that help them overall do better time management. Helps to promote self-esteem as students have choose to shine maybe in other areas. And it also has been strongly correlated with improvements in academics and higher GPAs for students who participate in athletics and extracurriculars such as music, theater, and other art opportunities. So really excited to see that we're coming back to school and being able to engage in those things. And we have a huge participation in our athletic program alone for a relatively small high school. It's amazing to have 160 athletes that compete in the fall season alone. And then also, as we talked during our convocation, and I hear the buzz around the district, is I think a fifth C, right, as we promote, try to get students ready for the coming 79 years that are left in this this century, and that's cultural competence. And so our students will leave Lenox and go out and join a world that awaits. They may work in other parts of the country or in teams from around the world. A lot of the research right now they're reading about the future of work. They're saying that teams will come together from around the world, kind of work on projects, break off, come back together on different projects, break off. And so that very well could be the reality of our students. So developing that cultural competency along with the other credentials, I think is a crucial skill to set them up for success. And so it's already, I think, a lot of energy and effort being put forth to make sure that we're developing the competency of our students and helping them become global citizens. So really excited to hear that as we start off the new year. So overall, I think we're off to a great start. I was very pleased as a fresh pair of eyes coming in and seeing the district. The vibrancy that you see the difference a few weeks made was amazing, going from these empty buildings that are kind of, upside down, furniture strewn everywhere, and, and what they look like a few weeks later after our teachers come in, get things set up and the kids join. They look different, they feel different, and the energy is just palpable. And so I'm really excited. I encourage anybody to reach out to one of the principals if you want to come and visit school and really see and feel what's happening. But I just want to say again, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of feedback and also a couple of photos of what it looks like in schools today. I think it's really important to continually try to bring people in and help them see what schools look like today for our kids. And I was really excited. I love being in schools. It's probably my favorite place to be. So I'm looking forward to getting back there as soon as I can.
Were you the photographer?
I was. There's a shot of my picture on my iPhone.
Well done.
I'd like to make a comment if I could. This was my 9th convocation, and I have to say, this was the most informative, energetic, engaging, motivational, and professional convocation I've ever attended, and it all goes to Dr. Master.
Oh, thank you. And I'm not here to say that, so.
I want to thank Ronnie for attending, and speaking on behalf of the school committee.
I always get excited to see everybody coming back. Think about how long I've been here, so that's good.
Well, thank you.
And we had great feedback from the faculty and staff as well. Still remember people, they say, I just have to stop in and let you know, like, convocation was great, it really was amazing, and it really, got me inspired and ready to go. And thank you so much for sharing. And so, really happy to hear the positive feedback about our district.
But just on the photos point, slightly more serious, thank you for taking that and emphasizing that. I think the focus on how school feels and getting it to use as normal as it clearly was. So we're really glad to see the photos.
I know that was important to you and many other folks in the community, so I wanted to make sure that not only that we're doing it, but we're also showing what that really looks like. I think that's really important.
It looks like school.
Yeah. And that's, really what we want to do, but I also don't want to just talk the talk, I want to walk the walk. I don't want you just, to say, oh yeah, it's gonna be like school, and then people are like, well, we don't really believe it. I want them to be able to see that, yes, it really is as normal as we can, given the conditions. And I think our staff are amazing, they're really trying hard to find creative and fun ways to make school look and feel like school.
I think it's great to hear about all the energy. It's just a terrific way to start the school year, and I was excited to see that Ronnie spoke at Convocation. I just wanted to say, as we go throughout the rest of the school year, if we can identify other ways for the school committee to be closer to the schools or more participatory, I think we should absolutely do that. I think it'd be great to build on that.
And I've encouraged both of our principals to also reach out to you. Obviously, we can't go in a large group, right, because of our meeting laws, but maybe in teams to go and do some visits to schools. I think it's really important to go and see what schools look like so that, and also, feedback, give feedback to constituents about what schools feel like. I think sometimes our last experience with school would have been our own participation in school. And so we tend to think that, I still teach up front lecturing and students are all sitting in rows. Then you go in, you see school today, you say, I had no idea this is what school is like. And so, I think it's wonderful for you to come in and have that. So I'll make sure they reach out to invite you in and keep you close, when it makes sense to have you come in and join and participate. And we're lucky to have, I think, a committee that wants to be that involved and not just be at, arm's length all the time.
Well, we have a committee with 5 members who have 13 kids. And then 2 of us who had 7 others to go through. So I'm a little further removed from it than most of you right now, but no, it's great to see the kids in school. Thank you for the pictures and stuff. All right, why don't we move on to the substitute policy revision? And Mark has included in the packet here recommended changes in our substitute compensation. And I want to say that I've been here a lot of years. And for a long time, Lenox was at $60 and it went to $70. And it was at $7 until just, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And there are people in the faculty who were telling us that 20 years ago, they were subbing in Pittsfield or Dalton or someplace or other, and it was already $100 then, when we were still at, we were back at the 60 or 70 range. So we did make some changes a few years ago. Substitutes in all areas are difficult to come by. I was listening to NPR or WAMC when I was driving. It was Tom Nadolny over in Farmington River. Of course, he had a bus driver, maybe two bus drivers. They probably only had two buses, Farmington River. But a driver with COVID, they had to close school for 6 days because of cases in the school, but also the bus drivers so they couldn't get the kids to school. And we found the difficulty of getting subs for all areas in recent years. Of course, last year was not traditional because they weren't gonna take subs. Subs didn't want to come in the building anyway because of no vaccinations and whatever, so it was just different. But it has become more difficult to get subs. And as Mark indicated in the report to the committee this week, the ASOP, however you pronounce it, system, which is something that is used wide, in a number of districts around, where substitutes are on the program, teachers are on the program. So if a teacher's going to be out, they log in and indicate they're going to be out because they're sick or whatever reason. And substitutes are watching this at night to see what openings there are, and then matching up if possible, with the idea that hopefully most of those positions get filled during the evening, and when somebody comes in the morning, there's not a lot of things that have to then be backfilled. And these are the jobs that Amy used to do this at Morris. And I think maybe Karen at the high school. And now for the first time, it'll be done with this electronic version, but not till December, right?
Right.
Which is good, but you still have to have substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a cadre of substitutes who are actually looking at this thing and saying, yeah, I want to do that 5th grade or that 10th grade assignment tomorrow. And that's what we don't have, is a big cadre of substitutes. And we're not alone. The whole county is this way, probably the whole state. But anyway, Mark's going to make a recommendation here with some numbers, and he's done some research around the county, and maybe Melissa has helped with that.
Hey, Bob, is there any discussion about having like our own substitute? In other words, just someone who we know is always available and you make an
Hiring
arrangement.
a permanent sub, like a building sub.
Like a permanent sub, so we don't, at least we have some stability and, going forward. So we're not scrambling every day. This has come up before. That's
Yeah,
why
it has come up before. And in fact, I don't know whether we did something like that last year or not. I don't recall.
We did add some positions that could be considered temporary permanent subs. Just because we had so many staff that were not in the building, we needed to have people in classrooms, and they worked for a good part of the year.
And so, I'm going to ask Melissa at our next meeting to do a financial overview and talk a little bit about some of the federal grant monies that are available. But that would be one area where we could borrow from one of these grants to hire building subs. And it's been requested at Morris that they really do need a little bit of extra fluidity, and especially when they have to cover and flex in certain ways that they feel like they're pretty tight in terms of, not having much breathing room. So Brenda has reached out and said, could we do that? And so Melissa and I have been in some discussions around using some of our ESSER money, that's one of the grants we have, to do that. Now, there's a plus and a minus. The plus is that it allows us to do that today, but if that becomes something that we start to feel, oh, this feels pretty good, and this is our new normal, and we're comfortable, or we start to expect that we're gonna have this, once that ESSER money dries up, then we're, facing a financial cliff, and then people are gonna say, oh, now you cut all these subs that we used to have, and, we used to have all this flexibility, and now, we're back to this, austerity budget. And so sometimes it feels, tough to take those things away once they happen. But we know that right now, I think because of COVID, we're feeling a little bit more of a pinch. I think we're feeling maybe some more possible sub shortages and sub failures than normal. I think that, sometimes people have to flex and cover to go and get, pool testing, those kinds of things. So it's helpful to have that extra pair of hands right now. So in the future, it may be okay to roll those things back because we may not have the same needs without COVID being here. But that's just one of the concerns. I think always is that, it's always tough once you have something there to take it away.
And I think that's important. I think the other thing that also that is on our list of strategic plan is recruitment and retention. So sometimes having the opportunity, I was a sub at Lenox after I finished my teacher training, and an opportunity to have some people coming out of teacher training, coming out of something, they're younger and still need experience, but it's a great opportunity, I think, to cultivate those relationships so that when you look at, we go to look at hiring and filling positions of retirees and you're going out to an open pool, when you have in-building substitutes, I think many young people coming out of teacher preparation or physical education, things where they're still trying to develop their career, they very much want to do that kind of work. And that might be really a win-win opportunity to develop staff and develop filling. Again, sometimes those people move into permanent professionals, reading specialists, et cetera, depending on where they're working on their education. So I think in some ways, yes, we are always budget sensitive to the number of FTEs, the number of people in the building. But when we're looking at people who get to know our children, who we get to know, and then can also even identify strengths and here's a person who really wants to teach in social studies and they're figuring out whether they're going to get their master's. I mean, not to belabor it, but I think there's some real opportunities there for us to, yes, we have to be budget sensitive to FTEs, but we're spending the money anyway. And are we actually developing, good staffing by doing it that way?
Right, and labor shortages increase your hiring costs overall. It's hard to go and recruit and find people, and so you spend more money doing some of those things. So there is, I think, a point where those things do start to level out a little bit. I think the other thing that we're living in now is a really different reality than maybe a few years ago. There was a time where it was really hard to get public school teaching jobs. People waited for years and they had to sub forever, and it was really difficult. And people had to kind of prove themselves. We could be very selective. Those days are not a reality right now. Nationally, teaching majors are down 60% at our colleges and universities. So there's a huge movement away from students going to study teaching in the first place. So the supply is way down, right? So that's problematic for us. Just to find teachers, to find subs compounds the problem. Now, we're lucky in Massachusetts that we can still use non-certified folks, although in a perfect world we wouldn't do that, but at least it's allowable. But even that, it's hard to find people that are willing to come in and sub. And so, it's tough. We have to try to stay competitive. And other superintendents that are listed here that might be lower than us also said, hey, let us know if you guys are HRs because we're going to raise ours too. So I know that Superintendent Richard at Lee is definitely that mindset. I'm supposed to call him tonight on the ride home to know what happens. So, they're interested in also trying to keep pace. And it's hard. I mean, if we all pay the same thing, then there's really no difference. But subs also are now in a position they can be selective and can choose, where they want to work. And historically, they choose Lenox because it's a pleasant place to work, and they like working with us. We have really motivated children, and so it's an enjoyable experience for them. But at the same time, if we're way out of line with our neighbors, I think people might say, it's great, but so is having 50 extra dollars, right? So, I think there's a point where they also have a reckoning with people who make sense for them, in their own financial sense.
Give a vague sense of, is for a district of our size or for Morrison High School, is it like every day we need a couple subs, or every week maybe we need a sub one day? What's kind of the scale of thinking?
So for me, it'd be really hard to tell because I'm new to the district and we're so new to the school year. Now, but I can tell you already, I see the daily absences that come in from the schools, and to see how many people are out today, for example, at MA DESE was shocking this early in the year to have that many absences. And so we do have, in my own experience, even in much larger districts, very high absentee rates right now this early in the year. It's almost typically, they don't see any absences maybe until like mid-October, and, we already see a number of them in the first few weeks of school, so, I could defer to Amy or Melissa if you have any sense, and Melissa, I mean, how you haven't been here all that long either, in terms of how many historically we are looking at.
I'd say at least 2 a day, 4 days a week. And sometimes 5 or 6 in a building on a given day, especially, historically during cold and flu season in the middle of winter, when there's something going around.
And that's not counting workshops or PD, right?
No, that's just absences.
It does seem like there's an issue of IEPs, team meetings, some specialized work, professional collaboration, which is always tricky, but at the same time, that's part of the dynamics of the school, right? Teachers have to step out to meet the needs of a certain student or situation.
So, what I've supplied to the committee to take under, advisement and, is to consider is raising the sub rates, from our current, $85 a day for non-licensed, substitutes to 110, and raising our, rates for our certified folks from 90 to 120. And then also on the second page, you'll see.
90 to 125.
Oh, sorry, I misspoke, 125, thank you. And then on the second page, under our Unit C employees, our cafeteria workers, paraprofessionals, and bus drivers, some different increases. The first two, right now are below Massachusetts minimum wage, and so, I think it makes sense to index their substitute rates to match the minimum wage in Massachusetts. The nice thing about indexing it that way is also we wouldn't have to come back every year and keep updating that. It would automatically adjust as minimum wage adjusts. And so minimum wage is set to increase this January to, I think it's 14 and a quarter, and then go up to 15 the following year. So that's where we are for our minimum wage right now. I don't remember what the minimum wage is today. Melissa, do you remember what today's minimum wage is?
$13.50.
So even right now, we're below minimum wage for those two positions. So someone, again, I think will look and say, does it make sense to go and work as a paraprofessional, or should I go and work, in any other jobs that pay this minimum wage? And then for our bus drivers, as Chairman Vaughn alluded to, these are notoriously difficult to staff. Now, we're lucky that we don't have too many drivers, but they do require a CDL, and so they're hard to find. But we're looking at, and this might seem a little counterintuitive to say, move from 20 down to 19.92 an hour. And the reason why we're at 20 is because we did have a driver who has significant experience, and so was kind of skewing our rates a little bit. But we felt that reducing back to the 1992 to match the part-time hourly driver wages would make sense. But certainly, if we want to stay at 20, that's fine too. But those are the suggestions right now in terms of helping us stay competitive in the substitute labor market to the best that we can, based on people who are choosing to make their choices around based on salary.
This is a proposed policy, so do we have to do a first reading, second reading?
Yes.
I don't know that we have to a first and second because we're just changing the numbers. If we were changing the wording, I'm not sure of that. I think we could vote tonight if people are amenable. I think we could vote on these number changes. I don't think it's necessary to have two readings unless there's people would like to reflect on this and then come back in October and vote on it. I think we could vote on it tonight. People or in mind to they could ask them.
No, I'm amenable to vote.
I'm sorry.
I'm fine with voting.
Yeah, I have one question about the words. We don't have to change anything. I'm just curious, the long-term substitutes not being eligible for health insurance. I'm envisioning if this is somebody who's potentially teaching most of the year. Is there maybe we don't have to, I would just rather that we see it all for health insurance. I'm curious if it may also have to do with how we offer insurance to the teacher, maybe we just can't
Isn't it, I think
Long-term are eligible, short-term.
it's short-term, right, yeah.
They're eligible for medical and personal leave, but not eligible for health insurance.
Oh, you're right, okay, sorry.
And of course, the long, I think the struggle is the 61 days, so you could be a long-term sub in one classroom for somebody who's on medical leave and then someplace else because we've had a vacancy. So there's some in and out, and I would just assume, remembering when we would do enrollment and getting on to health insurance, et cetera, that it would be.
Yeah.
You could do that, I don't have a problem with doing it, but I think there's the in and out, then you have your COBRA requirements of if you come off of employment. Many substitutes who do that kind of work do multiple districts, so they might, if you take a retired English teacher, for example, they might be on a list for 4 different districts to be able to help fill in those types of gaps that, or where you're looking for more of a certified English teacher, for example. If we have somebody out for 2 months because of a leave, you want to bring someone in who's maybe more curriculum specific as opposed to a different purpose. That's what I think. I mean, I think about the COBRA laws and all of that, and I think it can be complicated.
The Affordable Care Act requires that you offer insurance to anyone who works 30 hours or more, but in Massachusetts, it's regularly 20 hours or more. So typically you look and see if you're going to hire somebody for at least 90 days, that's when the insurance offering will kick in.
Okay. And so on this, where it's 6, does that mean here, if someone we thought would be 90 plus days, we would then offer them the insurance?
Yes, typically I look at the assignment and then give the town a heads up that this person will be here longer than X amount of days and they may want to take advantage of the insurance. Typically they don't, but we do offer it.
Okay, so I guess, at this point, I'd accept a motion to, approve the policy with the changes in the daily rates. Everyone's good with doing this tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to accept, I guess we're referring to these policies under the file number up on the right corner.
Yep.
So the previous policy file, GCG, I move to amend that policy as indicated to adjust the rates of pay for substitute staff at all levels.
Can I ask for a recommendation? Can I make one? Can we have an effective date for this? It will be easier if it
Yes.
goes through.
We usually put the effective date to date that the school committee votes on it, and not knowing if they were gonna take a vote tonight or on October 5th, we didn't put an effective date.
Well, there are effective dates in here.
Yes, because that's the last time that you approved, the body
The revision.
approved the revision to the policy. And it's usually noted as the date that the school committee votes to approve those changes.
And so I would add a sentence to my motion to say I move to adopt policy, the revisions to policy GCG to be effective immediately.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, second. Is there any further discussion?
Does that immediate effective work for accounting and,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Yeah, I noticed that when the last time we approved this, we revised it on September 16th, effective backwards to August 27th. So,
I have a question I'm just curious about, in looking at the Unit C substitute compensation, where currently we're actually paying below minimum wage, and as if I'm recalling this correctly, we talked about this a few years ago, I believe there was a municipal exemption, if I'm getting it right, that allows us to do that. And so, and that's what we opted to do at the time, but I wonder what effect that has had, if there's any that we can identify. I mean, we talked about it's hard to attract substitutes. Has it been hard to attract people to come in for the Unit C positions because we pay so little?
It is probably the most difficult job for staff right now in education is a substitute paraprofessional. Hiring paraprofessionals in general is difficult, but substitute one is very difficult. And so that's where we felt that at least making sure they're paying minimum wage would make it, you know, a little bit more competitive. Again, I know that we had that exception and then talked a little bit about that too, but it does seem that for our folks, at least bringing it to minimum wage would make it a little bit more attractive. But to answer the question, yes, it has definitely impacted us, and it's one of the most difficult positions for us to fill day to day. And it puts us in a really tough spot because we do have students who have IEPs that say that we have to have a one-to-one paraprofessional. And so when we don't have that, then we're out of compliance with the IEPs.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. For a roll call vote, Christine,
Christine Morrow, aye.
Megan,
Megan Kirby, aye.
Veronica,
Veronica Pendleton,
David,
David Rimler,
Bob,
Bob Lunch, aye.
Warner,
Twenty caps, aye.
Bob Vaughn, aye.
thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I noticed when I was approving minutes the other day, that it was in my ballpark to get back to you on scheduling the retreat. I was thinking that was in Amy's ballpark, but,
Bob, before you go, I just want to ask one quick question about staffing. How are we doing, we're talking about the substitute panel, what is the staff update for being in school? Are we still trying to fill positions, or are we?
So we're currently trying to fill a theater position for a few sections of teaching theater. Although we have a few options I think that we're working toward trying to close there. So we have some leads there. Recently, we also had a Spanish teacher resign to accept a job in New York City. And so that's another job that we'll probably have to post, but we need to take a look first to see if we can cover that with our current staff, if we have the capacity to do that. So we're in the process right now of getting the sections from our high school administration to see if we can absorb that position, given our current staffing, whether we need to hire, whether we need to think, you know, in another way and maybe move a teacher and backfill. So we're trying to figure out some of those right now are the staffing shortfalls we have. So not on wood, we're in a pretty good spot with any major holes, but we do have a few that we're trying to close.
Food services okay? How are we doing with the kitchen staff?
So we're, as far as I know right now, kitchen staff are okay. Again, that's one of the things I'm talking to Mike Richard about as well. We do share you know, some services there with Lee, but as of everything else right now, we're in a good position. Custodial staff, we're fully staffed. We have a few folks who are sick, and some spots that are back healthy.
Good, good, thanks.
okay, so I was wondering if Thursday, September 23rd for a 5 to 9 o'clock retreat, if that,
I'm out of town.
you're out of town or you're?
I'm out of town, yeah.
Okay, would the 22nd, or are you still out of town?
I'm leaving out of town on the 22nd and coming back on the 28th.
Okay.
Sorry.
No. With the 29th, I didn't look at my calendar, but the 29th or 30th.
Between those two, I prefer Wednesday or Thursday.
And Wednesday's the 29th, right?
Yeah.
I would have to step out in the middle for something, but if I'm the only obstacle, I'll miss an hour on the 29th.
What were the dates, the 29th and the 30th?
So let's look at the 29th.
That works for me.
Maybe I should check my calendar. Well, what do I do?
We would do 5 to 9, you said?
Yeah, 5 to 9.
I would prefer the 29th if possible.
That was
Be a little
Christine's
bit late.
29th, good?
Yeah, I would prefer the 29th too. I can make either one work, but because we have a smart team on Thursdays, so.
Are you coaching your daughter's soccer team? Well, of course, we want them to do well, so we want the coach to be.
29th is okay.
Okay. Go with the 29th then? Sounds
Yes.
good, thank you. Okay, that's all I have at this point. I hope that, I know Amy was sending some stuff out about subcommittees. I know she's gonna try to do her best to, see what combinations might work. And I know, Orin and I and Megan are gonna be meeting regularly on a Tuesday morning. Fairly regular, we're gonna have a regular schedule with HR. You know, sometimes we may cancel them if there's no business, but we're gonna try to, you know, do that, leading up to, you know, the ongoing discussions we're having with the LEA right now about memorandum of understanding, but other things that may come up. So Lauren's gonna work with Amy on kind of the agenda for that.
Yeah, she sent me some
Maybe
very,
that's already happened.
we're in good shape.
Very good. So we'll talk about, you know, subcommittees, you know, at our next meeting. At this point, I don't have anything more for the committee. So I guess I could accept a motion to adjourn. If people were so willing, or
I'd just take a minute to say how great it is to get school off. Thank everybody for the hard work, getting the year off to such a good start. And it seems to have gone as smoothly as we could expect, so. Thanks to everybody for your hard work.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mark, for kicking it all off.
yeah, you're juggling a lot of balls and doing it well.
We got a great staff, so you have a lot of help, so.
I know I appreciate the weekly update too, that's coming through. Very comprehensive, has nice links to things.
You should include at least like one fun YouTuber per week.
Now we're just up in the ante here, huh?
Kind of a compulsory things.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, this calls for a roll call vote. Christine,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Veronica,
Aye.
David,
Bye.
Robert,
Aye.
Lauren,
Aye.
Bob, aye.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
And then before 8 o'clock, look at that.